Should we give it another minute or should we get right into it?
I would just go ahead and get right into it.
So how do I get that slide show to get arrows? Got it. Okay.
All right. Welcome everyone. First off, I want to thank everyone who tuned in today. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to drop them in the chat window. We can get those answered as we go. My name is Megan Gallagher. I have been on the Green Building Committee for Rochester Area Builders for just over a year now, and I'm thrilled to kick off the Green Building series where we'll be sharing with our members unique projects and share their successes and lessons learned, which leads into today's case study. Zero energy ready, net zero, net positive, solar ready, and passive house are all trending words within the green building industry to describe the next generation of our buildings. As homeowners are beginning to recognize the need for and the benefits of purchasing a house that is built beyond code, some local architects and builders have stepped up to the plate to make their goals a reality. Energy efficiency is the overarching term most commonly used to describe a homeowner's goals. By focusing the design and construction on efficiency and reducing energy demand, allows homeowners to have lower utility bills and produce all of their annual energy through a small renewable energy system if and when they decide to produce their own energy. The Green Building Committee wants to utilize this opportunity to share experiences and lessons learned from its own members, to learn from one another and continue making Rochester a great place to live. So with that, I will hand over to the builder for this project, Mike Allen, who will discuss a unique project in which the homeowners were looking to build a zero energy ready home.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. So, yes, we built the Swatosh home. There's some odds and ends that we're just finishing up on, still at the moment, but all in all, the house went well, tested out very well. So we'll just get right into it, as Megan said, and kind of go through the process. I met the Swatoshes a little over almost 2 years ago, I suppose now. And when they approached me, it was on another project that I did where we kind of started getting into more of the advanced building stages. And as we kind of flirted in that medium realm. We didn't go full blown. There's some things on that particular project that I wish I could take back now that I've learned from each one. That's one thing about that I've seen now from a carpenter builder standpoint, that every time we get a little bit more advanced, there's so much more to look at and to learn from. And this one was definitely no exception, because we had quite a few people chiming in along with the homeowners. So with that, we'll kind of go through the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll kind of go from there and see what questions we have afterwards. So let's see if I know what I'm doing, which I don't really. Let's just be honest here. I think I hit which arrow? John told me to hit that arrow, and it is not. Up or down or sideways? That's not turning, right? That's not going through the slideshow?
No.
That one? Yeah, that's what I'm hitting. I could hit it harder. I'm really good at that. There. Fabulous. Thanks, John. So planning and design process. Alyssa Fordham really helped out on this in this stage, but like I said, meeting Mark and Molly on another project, they kind of were interested in the particular windows that we were using on the project that I met on a Fall Parade of Homes showcase that I had. And we can kind of go into a little bit of the design of the windows a little bit later, as we will in the presentation. But so when they approached me and kind of asked me some of my background, why am I using certain windows, how did I find these, we started to really boil down their goals. And so the crucial thing on these particular projects is definitely getting the right team together. That is the number one. So immediately I said, okay, we want to get the right people together that work together well with all projects and have the knowledge of this. They for sure had a pretty decent idea. They had done a lot of research, I guess, prior to this, looking at the Vetting Wolf home and other projects. So they had a very good idea. How to get that idea and the sticks in the wall was the next phase, and to put it on paper, of course. So that's where, and I'll introduce Alyssa with CRW. That's where I introduced those two, the couple with Alyssa, and they kind of started going through the process of putting it on paper, which was crucial. So Alyssa, would you like to take a little bit from there?
Sure. Is there a next slide, or you want me to just start from this slide?
I gladly go.
There's sure.
Next slide.
Yeah, so Mark and Molly came to me with a plan already, an idea of a plan already. And I think they had a great knowledge of, I guess, the green principles that come into play when building a house and designing a house. So in general, and this plan adhered to that. So in general, this plan was a nice open plan, which is conducive to energy efficiency, and their site was already selected. So we helped them place the house on the site, but that open plan allowed that south-facing sun to come in through some big windows into their open space and help reduce their heating load in the wintertime. And we introduced some solar shades for reducing the cooling load in the summertime. But the house itself is a very simple shape, which is great for waste reduction. It's a simple rectangle, and we fit all the pieces in it pretty nicely. And then the garage, again, is another simple rectangle. So when we put the house on the site, we've got it running east to west, so that has a lot of south-facing roof slope for solar panels. And let's see, yeah, that simple shape is I think was a really nice key feature to the home. It makes it easier to construct, probably a little bit more economical to construct. And again, that waste reduction. So here you'll see a lot of information on how we approach energy efficient or net zero ready homes. I won't bore you with all the going through the minutia of the information, but in general, we look at the energy efficiency, which is looking at the thermal and moisture protection. So getting really good insulation values to the tune of kind of a nice little way to remember it: 10, 20, 40, 60, and 5. So 10 would be your slab, 20 would be your foundation walls. Sorry, these are R values. R10 would be your slab, R20 would be your foundation walls, R40 would be your above grade walls, R60 would be your roof or attic, and then R5 would be windows. So that doesn't always happen exactly that way, but that's what we kind of strive towards, to get a really efficient envelope, along with air sealing and that as well. We have measures in here for water efficiency, low flow fixtures, using responsible materials, which are rapidly renewable materials, things that don't take as much fossil fuels to create, and are sustainably sourced. Also in here we look at durable materials, things that are easily cleaned and maintained, that have a good longevity and do not harbor mold or bacteria. So getting away from those carpets and using tile or wood. Again, the end product might be a little bit different. They really worked through a lot of those finishes with Mike, but this is kind of just the general approach of how we look at them. Again, getting through to that waste reduction, indoor air quality, touching on the equipment, the HVAC equipment, air filters. One of the things that Mark and Molly were really interested in is reducing toxins, I think, and having a healthy build. So they opted for the walls, the exterior walls, to be a double stud wall with a blown-in insulation in lieu of like a spray foam, which would be is really common in energy efficient homes, because you get your insulation and your barriers in one. It seals it up nice and tight. They opted for the double stud wall because of the better air quality and the less toxins that is in the insulation versus the potential that the spray foam insulation might have. Electrical, we always spec 100% LED, programmable thermostat, so that when you leave the house, you're not heating or cooling unnecessarily. And then, of course, landscaping, things that are native to the area, and controlling your site water is really important. So again, I don't want to get into all of it. Energy Star appliances would be really important as well under the electrical side of things. Again, with the indoor air quality and the reducing of the toxins and healthy build would be low VOC paints, sealants, caulks, all of that sort of thing. And I think this client in particular, they did a really good job of doing their homework. They knew what they wanted. They knew they had established really good priorities: healthy building, energy efficient, reducing their carbon footprint, all of that. So through these measures is how we kind of address those design needs for them. And I think with that, unless...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was going to turn it back over to you.
No, well, I wanted to also chime. That was just like with any project with Mark and Molly, you tend to get where, like for myself, we wanted to really I like spray foams. I use them a ton, and that was really that was a sticking point on a couple different occasions on, okay, can I use, you know, spray foam in that ceiling? Can I coat the ceiling in can lights? And you run into which can lights to use from electrical boxes even. And we chose I'm not even sure if I recall, I don't think we have any can lights, so we went with a 4-inch closed box and then sealed them up individually and went fiberglass on the ceiling. Spray foams, we did end up, I convinced them to go with the dimple board and spray foam from the rim joist down to the basement floor, which was really important to myself as a builder. So but we made sure to work with them on timing. As Alyssa said, they were very concerned with certain off-gassing of certain products. So they researched, and I had them work with James at Expert Insulation and Clay, and they did a really good job back and forth with different types of foams even. Expert offers one that had a much lower percentage of off-gassing and toxicities. So I know there's some soy products out there like Demolac and things like that, but that goes into a different, that's more open cell where I wanted to use the closed, but it definitely brought some hurdles. So it's good that we were able to work together with them, but they definitely had great ideas when they brought it to the table. And then sometimes it just gets to be so difficult on the availability of those ideas. We all know with the internet, hey, I can go get this particular product. And it's like, well, you could go get that somewhere. And it gets a little bit tricky on that. And heating was another one. We had ideas. We started with just a Mitsubishi system for their particular project, 2 heads up on the main level and 1 for the lower. We ended up, prior to that, while we were in the framing stages, continuously working on that, and ended up coming up with going to 2 Mitsubishi systems on the main level, but then a Fujitsu system in the basement, which is a small amount of ductwork down there. That's really the only ductwork that they have in that particular house. So they decided to use that. Gets a little tricky code-wise. You tend to get some inspectors that want to question how is exactly this going to work, but when you start to get the R factors that you're able to get with the R60, 35, approximately 35 in the walls, and other aspects with air infiltration, it doesn't take that much to actually move the needle on the temperature of that house. I was working on it one afternoon on a weekend by myself, sealing up some windows, and I wanted to try a different way of sealing them up. It was about 50 degrees outside, if I recall, and I watched the thermostat go up 2 degrees inside the home with the furnace, the temp furnace, just not even running. So it really incredible to actually be in the house just working and seeing how the house reacts and holds its thermal temperature just naturally. So it's pretty cool stuff from that standpoint as well. But yeah, the VOCs and things like that, we work right with Sherwin-Williams. They have enough products on hand, but we went through all of that with Mark and Molly, and was able to get that through with them. So, let's see. Yeah, so we've covered a lot of that. One obstacle that we did have with that was kind of interesting that I've worked a little bit with the steel siding and the roof materials is they chose black, which somewhat made me nervous. The thermal gain on that was going to be quite substantial because again, with Alyssa and I working with them on lot placement, south facing was crucial for the solar panels that were going to be installed in the future. We didn't have that on our bid from my perspective. What I did want to make sure is working with Solar Connection to make sure that I have any future sleeves that they needed. I wanted to make sure that we didn't have to drill or impede on any way the closed cell spray foam in the rim, whether it be the walls downstairs, anything of that nature. And when we started working on some steel sidings, and they had a couple different versions that they were looking at. We found one from Metal Sales, but it was much more of a commercial grade product. The nice thing about the product that they did choose for the walls was it was approximately 1.5 inches thick, rounded out. So it came in a vertical panel. So there was a lot of air behind it. So I ended up putting a more of a standoff type air barrier wrap underneath there so that I ensured that the fasteners, nothing was tight to the sheeting. And what that also allows with the J channel on the top of it, it would allow that as that thermal energy heats up inside underneath that steel siding, it was to allow it to rise naturally, but yet vent out itself so that we didn't get those higher temps underneath that steel siding. So it was a little bit of a situation where I hadn't run across it prior to that. So that was somewhat new. And then Alyssa addressed with the overhangs and sun direction, which, would you like to chime in on that, on how that all worked out, Alyssa, from a standpoint of how you project that? If not, I mean,
Sure.
'cause-
So, no, that's fine. So once we had the plan and we started looking at the massing of the house, I did a model of the home, and I was able to use the software to anticipate the angle of the sun at the different times of the year. So in the winter time, the sun is lower, and you want that sun to come into the space to help heat the home. And then in the summertime, it's high, so you want the shades to shade the windows so you don't get that sun directly inside the home. And through that software, I was able to determine then how deep those sunshades, whether it's a roof overhang or the shading for that lower level on that south facade, needed to be. I can't remember exactly what they needed to be, but that software was really, really helpful.
Yes, and it worked perfect. It's amazing to me. As I said, working on it this winter a little bit on that afternoon, on how that just the couple times I've been able to be a part of a project like this, that it is that specific. It worked out fantastic. So you can definitely see some of the other things that we did while framing up the dual walls. So from a carpenter standpoint, this was my first time doing a dual wall. So I tried to minimize any protrusions with my subcontractors that I could. All plumbing was interior, well, as much as possible. So we did quite a bit more through the subfloor, staying away from vapor barriers, looking at every place that we possibly could limit that exterior intrusions. Electrical layout, we all know code is approximately 12 foot lineal foot wise. So you can see the electrical box on that exterior wall there. We tried to limit those as much as possible just by shifting that layout just to bare minimum meet code. One other thing that we actually did on their particular was with the double 2x4 wall, we changed the exterior to 2 foot on center, but then decided it was, we stayed 16 on center on the interior side. One of those reasons was with the open floor plan, it gets tricky to run any mechanical from basement to main. And I went back to the 16 on center because the floor trusses were closer to that layout, and we were able to get any ventilation that we did need to run up there in a much cleaner line, less 90s, less restrictions on the airflow, less drag on especially the Fujitsu system and the air exchange system, the HRV that we install, because really we want, you know, again, you're trying to move air in this particular home much more than heat it or cool it in a lot of ways, because the house will maintain that. So you really don't need to call out for a lot of that. You're just kind of maintaining it with this much R factor. So the dual wall was definitely a different animal for me to build with. The double top plate, there's several versions of it. The University of Minnesota uses more of a plywood top plate. I ended up just deciding to go with a more of a structural 2x10 top plate, bind the walls that way. And you get into, there's a handful of questions where there's some debates on what is the best way right at the top of the wall. It gets into quite a discussion. Yeah, you can see the thicknesses that we're getting that interior break there, that thermal break where that fiberglass is going to get blown in there. Worked out very well. The nice thing with 2 foot on center and 16 on center is approximately every 4 foot, 2 of them do line up. And you need that because as they're blowing in that fiberglass and getting that, because that's a compression load, they're blowing in that fiberglass in that blanket, and it's a little bit closer right here with membrane. And as they blow that in, they're doing so many bags per foot. And as that's getting in there, you have to have so much pounds in there to ensure settling effect, the minimal. On the right-hand side, you can see that that's our basement. So we go with a dimple board underneath over top, but then approximately 3 inches of closed cell spray foam and up to the rim. It's really the only way. We looked at a couple different other options. We did look at exterior insulation. I am currently looking at a couple different things with some recycled products, but that I haven't been able to finalize. But in this particular case, we went this route and sealed up all those lines, especially with the foundation as the steps. Those plate lines are really difficult to seal the plate lines, even with some of your sill seals and things like that. There's areas that it's really difficult to seal up. There we can see some of our testing that we ended up. There's our black siding. Some of the overhangs, 3 foot on the lower part, a little bit shorter on the upper, with the steel, the black steel roof panels as well. All attic vented. The triple pane windows, we ended up right here, triple pane, and this is what actually Mark and Molly came to me originally is the Duxton window. They're out of Canada, smaller company. They're a fiberglass, extruded fiberglass product. The U factor, they really do a fantastic job. The weather stripping on there is wonderful. They install very well. They are a solid flanged fiberglass window, so there's not like a flip out style. So by the time we will seal up behind our flange, do the install, and then apply the closed cell spray foam around the perimeter of the window, when we're doing the testing on the house, we're really getting some fantastic numbers, how well they seal up. I have personally never seen a better window once we put a positive or a negative air charge to these particular windows and test them. So we get a lot of really good readings. We don't get water intrusion, which is crucial, as we all are aware of in the building industry with the issues that we have. So they do a fantastic job with that. Plus, you do not feel the thermal gain on these particular very much at all. There is the discussion, of course, where some people say, well, I want to receive some of that solar heat from the sun, but then you start to you have to really be in tune to your particular house from a standpoint. You could get too much on some days and not enough on others, and it just depends on how much the client really wants to utilize that solar energy through the heat gain of the windows. So that's another thing that is a discussion with all clients on this particular style of build. There's, you can see our Mitsubishi electric heat pumps. Again, we had one Fujitsu system, 2 heads up on the main level. They have come a long ways. I'm impressed with the noise factor of these. They are so quiet. They can read the room. They've got infrared sensors on them. They really do a fantastic job for this particular application. And really what you're looking at is you're trying to, instead of just blast heat or blast cool air throughout a huge square footage, you're minimizing that, and you're just specifically taking in certain areas of the house. First time using a hybrid electric heat pump water heater on this particular house. Mark was really involved, Swatosh was really involved with this particular part as well. So he really wanted this particular unit. Once I started being able to catch up with it and doing some of my own research on it, you can see why. The interesting thing is it puts off enough heat by itself that it probably will keep a third of that basement warm in the winter, which is incredible to me. But again, with this with this style of house. Here's some of our final testing results, which were fantastic. We didn't quite hit the mark we were hoping for, but close to pass it. But you can see also when some people talk about how expensive is it and where's your savings, I think we get too hung up on the overall cost of a product, especially when you have clients like these. They're not looking at selling this house in 2 to 5 years like we do across the nation, which has been the trend across the nation. You know, we're always moving. In this particular, they're really looking at that long term. So when we talk about cost savings on a build, we also need to really start to, I think, focus in on what are the cost savings per month, because it has to contribute. So when we say, are we regulating too much? Are we insulating too much? Are we sealing too much? There is a give and a take there. I'll definitely, that's a discussion that all clients have to have, but there has to be a presentation of, you know, presenting to them the options of, yes, but here's some of your returns and here's some of the facts. So that's something to think about as well. Let's see. So again, I think when we look at the Swatage houses, as much as I did learn on this particular build, as we've said before, having the right team together was crucial. Everybody has to stay on the same page and attempt to, because they're, even with this house, we could build this house 2-3 different ways and still stay in the same realm, but the client themselves, a lot of the times when they are looking for that higher energy efficient or flirting with passive design and anything in that nature, they're going to have a really good idea of the direction they want to go. And then the rest of the pieces, the technical part to get that right team together. And in this particular, having a list on board, my heating guy, and a good electrician, you're really throwing a lot of ideas, and they have to be open-minded from a standpoint of, okay, we don't want that electrical box right there. And to some people, they're going to say, well, that's just a waste of time, but it's not. Each and every piece has to be looked at critically. So a lot of detail there as well. So unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to chime in on or add to that, we can answer some questions. Is that correct? Do a little Q&A.
I don't see any questions in the chat box, so we can give people a minute if they have any.
Okay. Megan, you with being part of some of the testing prior to, you know, you've got the vetting Wolf House. There just isn't that many other houses to really compare these to in the southeastern part, a little bit closer to the cities perhaps, but.
Total tonnage of the HVAC is the question.
A total tonnage of the HVAC. That's going to be an interesting one with the 2 units that we have. Let me see if I can look that up really quick. And I thought I had. We ended up switching. So someone's asking a total tonnage of the HVAC, and we ended up switching to that Fujitsu system, so it's not part of our original notes. I think I am going to have to get back on some of these, and 2, if anybody wants, they can always get my email, because I'd be happy to look back at my notes on that on final, because once we switched, and added the Fujitsu. The Fujitsu system was something entirely different that I had never seen before. So I'm going to have to look that one up. I apologize on that.
To go off of what you were saying though, Mike, I think there are probably only a handful of homes a year that are being built to this level. And I think the best people to ask for that would be XRG Concepts, since they are able to kind of see all of the different builds that happen throughout the area.
I can't, yeah.
I have a question from John. Someone must have asked John through the chat. Is the garage conditioned? If so, what are the interior design temps in the summer and winter?
Oh, good question. So the garage ended up, we went with 2x6 walls. We went more conventional, or what we would consider more conventional in the garage case. What we did change was a vapor barrier paint. We roughed in an extra electrical for their garage so they can add a Mitsubishi unit down the road. It wasn't in their budget at this point in time. But we did go 2x6. So you've got your R21 and R40, 35 or 40 in the ceiling, fiberglass. But then they elected to go with vapor barrier paint. That was something that Mark was just not, Mark was not a big fan of a standard vapor barrier. And I can appreciate that because of the remodeling I've done over the years. Vapor barriers, as we now all know in the building industry, can be a double-edged sword to a certain extent. I was somewhat surprised. I would have thought in-floor heat would have been all day long what they would have looked at, and they said, no, we just don't feel that they needed it. They were fine with that. And so that kind of surprised me on this particular project, that we didn't go with in-floor heat. But yeah, they have enough electricity in there with chargers, of course, for their vehicles, that they can put a Mitsubishi unit in there. And that's kind of probably what they're going to end up going with. One thing that they did add, or that we added, we did do electric in-floor heat in the master bath, and then we used something that was also new to me in this particular project, which is an electric cove heating that sits approximately 12 inches down from the ceiling, and it sits at a 45-degree angle. It works basically like electric baseboard. As that heats up, the ingenious part of it, instead of it being on the ground, it's up off the ceiling and it's tilted at a 45-degree angle. It's aesthetically much more pleasing, in my opinion, than the electric baseboard. And what it's basically doing again is you're just using the hot air rises theory, and as it sits at that angle, it basically barrel rolls that heat in throughout that room, just in case they wanted, or if the Mitsubishis, I think these Mitsubishis are rated for at 10 degrees or to what they quote unquote freeze out. Whether that's going to happen, there's a bunch of people that want to chime in on when they will freeze out, how long they can, but then as of a backup, they do have some electric cove heat in certain rooms. So again, a lot less ductwork. There, you don't see very many registers at all in this particular house with that. So
there are several questions that came through, so I'll just start firing them off.
okay.
Square footage of living space of the house.
approximately 1750 on the main, I believe we ended up with.
Will there be heating issues during rare times when temps are -20?
Yeah, and that's where that question is with the Mitsubishi, and they say, okay, what is that discussion? And that's where you offset a little bit of that with the electric cove heat, some electric baseboard. If you want to go that route, you can go with the electric in-floor heat packs. The Mitsubishi has come a long ways on, and again, you get into where does wind chill play a factor, placement of that, and what truly is influencing that Mitsubishi unit to basically turn on. The one thing to keep in mind, where we put some of the condenser units, which would have been on the southeast side with the black siding and that sun exposure, I'm not sure if there's going to be an ounce of snow between 5 to 6, 7 feet away from this house. It was incredible on a warm day to be putting these panels on, and you could feel that heat coming back off of there. So it's going to be interesting to see how these units do react to a cold day and how that all comes about. So setting up your utilities on these particular style of heating and cooling system is crucial, for sure.
I think it would be fun to bring the homeowners on a webinar perhaps after the first winter. I know I've spoken with the Vettings, and
Yes.
they were forced to install backup heat systems from the inspector, and confirmed that after the polar vortex, after their first winter, they didn't need to use the backup heat at all. So they actually turned the splits off in the middle of the night and just let the house coast through the night, and maybe lost, I don't remember, 5 degrees throughout the night. So crazy.
It's truly incredible. Like I said, working there on a Sunday afternoon and you're not seeing anything, you're just moving air, you're just maintaining it. That house temperature actually came up a bit. And of course, we know that, with Minnesota, we see 100 and approximately 30 to 40 degree swing in one given year. We could easily see that. But when you're talking about something that really doesn't get influenced by that on the interior side as much as our standard build, it's pretty incredible. Afternoon of not having those Mitsubishis run, so far we have yet to see, as you stated, Megan, with the bedding wolf, or in this particular, we're just not going to see. It doesn't take that much to maintain, and that's what the great thing about this particular style of build is. Once it's at that temperature, that thermal mass and everything about it just kind of stays there for quite a period of time.
Someone did ask, what is the backup heat for times when it's too cold for the air source heat pump?
Yeah, and that goes back right to, typically you're going to see that electric cove heat, maybe some electric baseboards, some in-floor. You can use different variations for that.
Did they apply for all of the rebates from the utility company that serves them? And I already know the answer to that, and that would have been XRG Concepts would have applied for all qualifying rebates for the utility companies.
Correct.
Okay, doesn't seem to be too many houses built to the standards. Any guess as to why not? Are there things listeners can do to help these home builds be more commonplace? That's the best question of all.
Yeah, that, I think, so I'm gonna be, with COVID and everything, I was supposed to take my passive classes down in Chicago this winter. That got canceled. We went to, by the time they reformatted the whole entire class and went to more of a Zoom online, was right in the teeth of my busy season. So I postponed it. My classes will start in October. I think education is crucial. We're learning more and more. We're seeing a different generation of build too. The younger age groups are definitely, this is in my belief, to a certain extent, will be pushed by the market. You know, people concerned about more environmental energy usage, things of that nature. I think with all, the market will drive the boat just like it always has. We'll see a different approach to this and a different attitude. It will look for more of the long game, where in some circumstances, a lot of people in building are just looking for that shorter term, give me some equity in this and then move it, where this is just a different feel to it altogether. And I think we'll see more and more of it and more education out there. But it is tricky to find subcontractors, builders that are interested in going through the work of trying to study it, learn it, and getting the right group of people. But I think it's just the market will drive that.
To second that, that is kind of our goal for this Green Building series, is so that builders like Mike can, you know, go through the lessons learned and build off of each other's knowledge, as he is beginning to be much more comfortable with taking on projects like this.
Yeah, the trial and errors.
Okay, I think I got through all the questions.
Yeah, we're looking at one project right now that will be pretty intriguing. Alyssa was has did the initial drawings, and that will be up on this beautiful hill and a lot of windows. And you know, I've worked on quite a few projects over the years, and when you start to better understand, and even being a volunteer firefighter, it helped me with the building science part of it, from positive and negative airflows. And that's where I really started to get intrigued with this, because you start to learn where all of this comes into play, and how some of the practices that we have in traditional style building just aren't working. You can heat up that south face of the house, and if it's built with just our standards, the house is never going to feel comfortable. It's always going to be so far out of balance. That's not of anybody's fault. That is just the design in which we have. And you can mix and match your window design as well. A lot of these companies will allow other windows, or the Duxton window, you can drop down to a double pane and take away some of that U factor to a certain degree, and allow some more of that sun, that thermal energy to come in if a person again wants to watch that. But this particular house going to go over by Lake Zumbro, you know, that's one of the ones where it's, I think, my responsibility to educate them in the standpoint, you don't want to sit in your house looking out this gorgeous view with the shades pulled. and if we use the wrong window, or if we use the wrong setup, that's exactly, you've spent all this money on all these big beautiful windows and doors, and you can't even truly utilize them during the most gorgeous bluebird days, just from the standpoint they don't function as what they should have or needed to. So there's a lot of education to that as well. But it's intriguing to see the market coming on.
Could you go back to the HERS, the home energy rating certificate slide? Back to.
There you go.
Someone commented, did the HERS slideshow show over 5,000 in energy savings per year? If that's true, that's the equivalent in your monthly cash flow of about 70,000 in buying power on a 30-year mortgage.
That's incredible. I mean, it really is. When we talk about affordable housing, when we talk about other items, that has to start being brought in to the discussion, in my opinion. I sit on quite a few committees and meetings on these. And part of this, what some builders are, hey, let's deregulate, we can pull some of the other items out of the equation. That's not always that's an easy one to approach, but it's not exactly the correct one as well, because it still comes out of your pocketbook, whether it's on the initial build or the savings, but the savings has to be imparted. So yeah, it's very crucial. And what we do know with right now, of course, natural gas is really cheap. We all know that, and electric's a little bit more, but we can offset that as well with certain practices, and with technology coming on the way that it is, that does change the discussion.
And just for some context, it's saying relative to an average US home, for the HERS index, I'm assuming that's comparing to the score of 100, which is a home built to the 2006 IECC. So it'd be comparing the annual savings to a home built to the 2006 IECC.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought up cost of ownership, because that is definitely something that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Like I say, we don't think about the bills, the monthly bills, when we want to put that part of the equation, but the monthly bill is still the mortgage, and the monthly bill is still your all of your energy bills. They have to go hand in hand, and it's not done that way in a lot of discussions in which it has to be included for sure. Anybody, do you have anything else?
The only thing I can think of is if you're able to add to the chat, maybe just drop your email into the chat if anyone wants to reach out for further questions.
I am not sure I can do that. This is, I know John tried to get where I could see the questions and we could not. Basically, email-wise, it is mike@mikeallenhomebuilders.com. And of course, REB has all my contact information as well. If anybody would like to ask me any further questions, for sure. The tonnage, I can get that information, but I want to make sure I know exactly what that is. I'd hate to speak out of turn because again, it changed about midpoint, so I want to make darn sure I have the correct information, and either email me or I can send it to you, Megan, as well.
And John said that he will be posting this on the RAB YouTube channel. It's cool.
Fantastic. We're going to be YouTube stars now, and we should just do TikTok too. Why not? Like 30 seconds, something.
That might be pushing it.
All right, fine. I know my stepdaughter says you should do a TikTok, and I was like, no, I don't think so. There was my opportunity.
You're gonna be a virus. I mean, you're gonna go viral.
Virus,
Well,
exactly.
stay tuned for more Green Buildings series case studies.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your